Our screens may be all different sizes this year, but our films will have the same sized impact. They'll shake you, move you, and refuse to leave you. Mark our words. Groundbreaking stories are very much to be continued.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spoiler Warning podcast. This is our 2020 Toronto International Film Festival review of Nomadland. I'm Christopher Schnese.
And I'm Stephen Miller.
And if you're joining us for the first time, the Spoiler Warning podcast is a weekly film review program. Each week in the show, we're going to dive in, debate, discuss, and argue over the latest films coming to a streaming platform near you. Of course, except for in this string of episodes where we're talking about films that just got released at the 2020 Toronto International Film Festival. We got to see a few of them, and we're talking about them here. This one, we got some news about the night after we watched it. This one, what is the prize called over at Venice?
The Golden Lion? Yeah, the Golden Lion.
Gotcha. So, obviously, this is probably going to be a pretty positive review. So, we haven't talked about this yet, but I think you picked out most of the selection of things that we are reviewing in this run.
Yeah.
What helped you with that selection of films?
That's a good question. I've been interrogating that because I feel like now that news is coming out from the festival, I covered our bases pretty well in terms of movies people are talking about, but I don't know how. Like I don't really know what I was using. For this movie, I know because...
It's like a Praxis of Francis McDormand, and you're like... in.
Yeah, well, so it is true. The heuristic of, like, is it anchored by an actor that I know? If so, then I'm probably going to put it... it's probably bad that festival movies, I use that heuristic, but it tends to be a decent one. In this case, though, Chloé Zhao made The Rider, which was in or almost in my top 10 of 2 years ago. So I knew that, or maybe it was just last year. When did The Rider come out? I don't remember. No, 2 years ago. Yeah. The Rider was from a little while ago. But anyway, I knew that I wanted to see her next movie. So this came as no surprise to me, but I'm going to be honest, I didn't expect this to be a big film or anything. Like, it seemed just like an interesting little movie, and I was curious to know more about it, but I would not have predicted that this was about to win a major award or be like one of the most talked about films at the festival, so we got lucky. Shiva Baby, for instance, I have no idea why I clicked that button. I was just like, okay, we're doing this.
Hey, that worked out, though. It was a good introduction.
Like, after I picked most of these, I did find an IndieWire article where people talked about, like, movies not to miss at the TIFF lineup. And so that's where I found, like, another round. That's one that I would have missed otherwise, probably.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Otherwise, just luck at the draw.
Cool. Well, we're about to talk about a film where some people might not have a luck of the draw. We're talking about Nomadland once again. No trailer for this one, so I'm just going to give a brief description. It basically follows a woman who is living that nomad lifestyle and traveling around in a van, and sort of shows her as she encounters other people who are part of this subculture of people who have sort of just left normal civilization and live out of vehicles and travel around the country, get work where they need it. And yeah, Stephen Miller. Is this as great as everybody's been saying it is?
Certainly for me, it is. I mean, so Carson actually texted me on Sunday and said, Sarah and I just watched the trailer for Nomadland and said, this is the most Steven movie of the year.
Is there an actual trailer?
Think they're wrong. There was something, at least. There was something that they watched. I didn't actually interrogate what it is that they saw. Okay. Maybe it was just the clip that they saw too.
Yeah.
But this is definitely the kind of movie that is right up my alley. I know it's kind of reductive to just talk about a movie by describing other movies, but like Leave No Trace is a very good comparison for some of what this movie is doing. I think Andrea Arnold's movies like American Honey are good examples too of films that are anchored by largely amateur or like non-professional actors, and then just like putting a few professional actors in there and watching them blend in. I think there's something really beautiful and contemplative about that if you can pull it off. And we're going to talk a little bit later tonight, depending on how far we get. I don't think every movie that tries this pulls it off exactly. But when it works, it's just beautiful. And I thought this was a very, very lovely movie that it is not plot driven, right? Like you probably know that just from reading what it's about. And certainly if you don't, then 20 minutes into the movie, it's pretty clear that this is, let's follow the life of this woman. And the story behind the filmmaking, I think, is really cool, which is that Chloé Zhao got tapped to do the Eternals for Marvel, which was her big break, because the writer was just did huge in the festival circuit, and she immediately got catapulted to Marvel fame. And she said, I have like a few weeks before I have to start filming the Eternals. I want to make another independent film first. And she basically just got Frances McDormand, David Strathairn, and met a bunch of people, and they made this movie on the road. So again, very, very American Honey in how it came about. And I just think it's so, like, the word I want to use is humanist. Like, it feels like a movie that is about having empathy for a group of people and trying to tell how they live as accurately as possible. And yeah, it was just beautiful. Like, there are multiple times this movie where I like teared up just hearing people describe what I knew had to be their real life. Because there are certain people that you're just like, you could not be a professional actor, not because you're not doing a good job, but because you're not in central casting. Like, you are so specific. You have to just be you, The
funny thing too is,
this
like,
movie,
the whole time I was watching the film, I was like, I think these are all nomads. And then, like, when the credits roll, it's like character name, first name, actual person's name, same name. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is basically, those are all those actual people.
Yeah, like, literally the only person in this movie, as far as I can tell, that does not have their real name is Frances McDormand. Her character's name is Fern. Even the other actor, David Strathairn, he's Dave or David in the movie. Like, this is the kind of movie where you can tell that they were just all getting to know each other and just being themselves and just capturing this, like, beautiful American landscape. And it does not hurt that we are in the middle of a pandemic. And so seeing people in, wide open spaces throughout America, just like basking in the solitude, I found that just very lovely. I think I think it's beautiful. Just everything, the little details of how do you live out of a van? How do you find work? This idea of this other life where people, they recur in each other's lives. Like, they might run into each other 6 months later because they're both working this gig. Everyone knows that there's a beet harvest in North Dakota. It's just, I just liked it. I love movies that teach me about a subculture or a way of living that I've never thought of before. And I thought this just combined it with the sort of cinematography that I love, of just like, let the camera bask in how the landscape looks. And with this, like, strong empathy streak of let's feel for characters, like characters who are no longer with us or characters who have lost something and are trying to cope with that loss. I love this movie. I think it lives up to the hype, while at the same time being a very not hypey movie. So who knows how it's going to be by December when it actually comes out and people have heard raves about it for so long. But I really loved it.
Yeah, I hadn't heard, like, a ton of hype. I had seen one tweet from David Ehrlich like, as I was about to start watching it, and then I started
and he
hearing,
never hypes.
But I wasn't, like, paying attention to the list of films because, like, most of the people that I follow probably aren't watching these films, so I kind of just wasn't paying attention. But I honestly had no idea what I was in for when I sat down to watch this film. But this is a beautiful fucking movie. And it's amazing too, because the journey you go, like, at least I went on through the film, is obviously the empathy is there, but half the time you're watching these people and you're like, this is the most freeing thing I've ever seen. Like, could I do this? Could I just fucking go away and like live it? Like, you at times you strive to want to do what they're doing, and at times you're like, oh my god, this is like harrowing, and like I can't believe that they're surviving even trying to do this. And like it constantly just ebbs and flows between kind of those two emotions. You see like the beauty of the world, and you see like kind of the not sad. I mean, yeah, definitely sadness, but like they're like you're constantly going back and forth, and it made me think about not the ethics, but like it still feels a little weird, not icky, but it feels weird that all these people are real and just talking, and she is pretending to be a person that is going through the same thing. But I assume she like lived out of that van the entire time they were making the film. Like I assume,
yeah, I'm sure.
I just assume that everyone else stayed in hotels and she stayed in the van. Like that's just.
I want to believe this is like First Cow, where they probably spent like weeks just learning how to shit in buckets and do everything you have to do.
Yeah, like it was kind of just an amazing watch, and I think that like it's first of all it is shot very documentary style, where like. You're like, I'm watching a narrative film, right? This isn't a documentary, but it's clearly documentary style, and you're watching it and you're just watching these people live. And I found myself completely like engrossed in what was going on. And, you know, the sort of the relationship she builds with these different people that, as you said, she keeps encountering over the seasons as she's kind of going from place to place, trying to get work at different places, just kind of, it was an amazing thing. I also started to think about like, is everyone these like, is everyone at every road stop that I've ever been at one of like somebody who lives this nomad lifestyle? Like, like it just kind of, my head went all over the place as I watched it. And I just kind of got so engrossed in this film that like by the time it was over, I wasn't ready for it to be over. And how much stuff that they like, you're mostly watching a slow moving experience roll forward. And then as you get to the end, there's just this enormous crescendo, which I was not prepared for. It like wrecked me. I don't even know what wrecked me. Like just the last shot of the car on this like lonely road, and then that title card for those that had to depart, we'll see you down the road, or whatever the line is. Like tears instantly started pouring from my face, and I was like, I don't even know why I'm crying. This is just amazing. And I just thought it's a brilliant film, but I can't tell you why it's brilliant. It's just the experience of watching it. You're like, this is a brilliant film, and I don't know what it's doing, but it's doing that really, really well.
Yep. Yeah, I know exactly. It is very much experiential, and that is it. I mean, not to avoid credit. Like, I think Frances McDormand is doing amazingly well at chameleoning into this lifestyle and feeling like she isn't just an actor walking around a bunch of these real people. Like, you actually believe her. And this plays so well to her strengths too, right? As being the kind of no nonsense, I'm not gonna like amp up the emotion. I'm gonna be like, grit my teeth and bear it and keep moving forward. Like I feel like this is the opposite of the way Three Billboards used that same strength of hers, where instead of heightening it up and making it kind of actorly, this is like, no, now this is just about a little bit of sadness, but not wallowing, just like the innate sadness of being alive, you know?
So like while you were saying that, it made me, I think I know why it weirded me out a little bit, is because I wasn't convinced that the people she was talking to knew she was an actress. Like, like she's so good, and she is doing like she's so amazing at this. Like that's why I was joking about like I bet you she slept in that van the entire like time they were making the film, because I was so convinced by her that it made me wonder if everyone knows she's playing a role, or if everyone thinks she's one of them, and they're like getting like it. If that is the case, which I'm not saying it is, because it's probably not, it was like she was so convincing that I worried that there was manipulation of the people that they were filming. Like, do they think this is just a documentary that's following this woman, or do they know that this is a narrative film where she is an actress pretending to be one of them? So
now an interesting thing would be, I am curious to know if you would like The Rider if you went back and watched it now, because The Rider was 100% non-professional actors, which is the difference, right? This movie at least anchors it so the protagonist is a professional actor that we are familiar with. And in The Rider, it's the same way, where it's blurring the lines between documentary and fiction, because The Rider was about people who train and ride wild Mustangs in like the Badlands of Montana. And the protagonist is a character who had a really terrible accident where he almost died. And he suffered some brain injury, almost certainly. And he is trying to grapple with not being able to ride anymore. And that movie like wrecked me. But that is the kind of movie that I feel like this isn't for everyone. Like, this is maybe a little bit too blurry. Whereas this movie, I feel like I didn't worry about manipulation at all. Even like I never ethically worried about manipulation in either of these movies. But here, like, I didn't even have that little voice in my head, because these people are choosing their life, right? And they are so happy to explain it and happy to show people what it looks like. I just thought it worked amazingly well. I do think the title card too is more than anywhere else where Leave No Trace came back to my mind, because it's kind of about like, it isn't pathologizing it, but it is saying like what drives people to want to live this life. And it's liberating, but for almost everyone, there's a hint or an actual story of a bad thing, a terrible thing that happened in their life where they just have to, and I'm not going to spoil where the movie goes, but we get that sense here too of like, these people can't do the easy thing anymore. Like they have to just go seek that on their own.
And that's one of the things that's so brilliant about the film is, for the most of the people who are living this lifestyle had a thing that thrust them into the lifestyle, but now they celebrate it and they don't want to return to normal society. They like are proud of this life that they've built, or the things that they do, and like their ability to travel and their freedom. Like all those scenes where it's big gatherings of it's like everybody's going to pull off on the side of the road in this one area and trade supplies and have stories. And like it wasn't clear if they all pitched in to make all that food, or if there was somebody who was coming to help feed people. Like that didn't, I didn't understand exactly how that came about, but it was a big communal thing of these people who support each other and help them in their lifestyles. And it's like, no one ever, it felt like it was liberating to be in this, even though it originally came from a place of, not like unintentioned, like life circumstances put a lot of these people in these places, but then they embraced it and it became a thing that they celebrate. And it was just an interesting thing to see that transformation in certain people and see how people think of different things and hear stories of what people did leave behind and stuff like that. So I
just love the, like you mentioned the feeling of, you go back in your mind at all the rest stops you've ever been to, and you wonder, were they nomads? Were they living this life? And I had that for like people who work at national parks or people who are giving tours, where I was like, interesting. Like these seasonal jobs, like I never really considered before who is working these jobs where they have a 2-month tourist season and then nothing, and it was just so interesting to me, and especially the disparity again, because there's a part of this movie too that is clearly economic. I mean the title card that it opens with describes the history that led to at least some people abandoning and living a nomad life, and it is fairly damning. They're choosing this life, but it still becomes the haves and the have-nots, and there's something about like tourists visiting a place and then the person who is showing them around and explaining the rocks to them lives in a van, where it's that like contrast struck me in a really interesting way, because I'd never once considered that in my life before, that like the people who are doing these jobs might live like that. And it also made it weird to me because Amazon clearly had involvement in this movie. Like Amazon is featured in this movie very specifically, like their logo and the inside of factories, in a way that I don't think you can do that in the name of parody or whatever. Like that, they had to be okay with it. But
Yeah.
I feel like, doesn't Amazon kind of represent everything that this movie is against? Like that was kind of weird to me, of being like, what was the nature of Amazon's relationship with this movie? Because it feels like it should be more damning of that than a company would be okay with.
So yeah, so when it started, I definitely was like, oh, is this whole movie going to be like about like Amazon like creating these scenarios and stuff? But then it turns out this is a seasonal job. I assume this is Christmas when like everybody is buying and shipping a million things, and they just need to bring in unlimited number of people. And it's like, literally, it's so important that Amazon delivers all this shit on time that there is literally no questions asked. Come in and you have a job, and people just flock there to do that kind of thing. So I think maybe they were fine with their portrayal in it because it was like recruitment video for people to know that they can get work during the holiday season.
Yeah.
For me, though, one of the most interesting things, though, about that aspect of it is unless I misunderstood the conversation, it seems like for these seasonal workers, Amazon pays for their like slip at the RV park.
That's what it seemed like. Yeah.
Yeah. And also with the title card at the beginning, there are towns that get created out of nothing around like a mine or a quarry or like all these things that are naturally existing in the world, where a company suddenly needs to like completely destroy a section of the planet, like in order to make a profit. Like they create an entire city basically of just the workers. And if that company ever goes away, like there's just this ghost town that doesn't exist anymore because there isn't. And yeah, it's kind of an interesting, like thing. I mean, I guess it shouldn't be too interesting to me, considering there's like a mini one at the base over in Alameda where it's like There's also like a little section where it's like all these houses that were there presumably for people who were stationed on base and now are not. But yeah, it was just kind of interesting to see that like a town can just suddenly collapse and blink off out of existence because it blinked into existence at some point specifically for this one job.
Yeah. Yeah. And it also, that was part of the quarantine thinking I had too, which is, this is a person who drives around in a van, but there are huge houses out there that are abandoned. And it made me think, like, what is a home, right? Like, what is valuable and what is not valuable? Yeah. Because space, like America has plenty of space, right? There are plenty of places that one could be. But when the big company leaves, then like the money is gone, right? So that's part of it, is like either you need to be able to live as a nomad or you need to be near a place of stable business.
Yeah.
And then I guess probably it's like food and electricity and all the other things start to add up. But it does get you thinking of like what is essential and what isn't essential, because it isn't places. Like it has to be something else. And I don't have an answer for that, but that was kind of like where my brain was at by the end of the movie.
Luckily, Stephen, there's a film later on in our list of films to review that tells you the definition of a home.
That's true.
It's found.
You're right.
But my second joking response to you is, did you not learn any lessons from First Cow? If you go too far out, you have to wait for rafts to come down the river to give you supplies.
You're right. You're right.
At least a van can go upriver, metaphorically speaking.
It can certainly go down by the river.
Yes. Well, Stephen, any last comments before we get to verdicts?
No, I think this is the kind of movie that is just a beautiful experience, and there's not a whole lot that one needs to say about it. You just need to live it for a while. Agreed.
Well, Stephen, let's get to your official verdict then. If you were going to give us a must-see, a recommend with a caveat, wait for rental, pass with a caveat, or a must-avoid, what would you give it?
Must-see. easily. I think this is a beautiful movie, and it seems like it's scheduled to come out kind of early December right now, and I would encourage everyone to check it out when that happens, because I think it's lovely, and it's hard for me to think of someone who wouldn't get something out of this. It really just is the feeling of, if nothing else, even if there's no empathy or economic anxiety or anything else that you relate to, it's just the feeling of being on the road. I think we all will get something from that right now. And there's beauty to it, even if you take away all of the human element. It's just like a lovely movie and a lovely story.
I just had the most amazing thought, Stephen. If it is slated to come out in December, we're still going to have the coronavirus in December. Go see this at a drive-in in a van. Oh my God.
Yeah, good call. See, in December, maybe this won't happen anymore, but I might be doing a cross-country RV trip, and so then I'll be living my Nomadland life, except I guess an RV doesn't really count.
Yeah.
There's actually a scene where they kind of get into that.
But yeah, I'm going to give this a must-see as well. I thought this film was beautiful, and it made me cry, which is always a good thing. And yeah, so much that Steven and I can probably talk about as soon as we stop recording about the very, very ending of this film. But
yep.
But yeah, good times.
I do also want to say, in a way that hopefully doesn't spoil anything, Swanky attended the premiere a few days ago, so rest easy if that was a thing you were wondering. Yeah, I won't say anymore.
Nice. Well, that is going to do it for our review of Nomadland. Stephen Miller, if people want to find you throughout the week, where can they do that?
People can find me at twitter.com/sdavidmiller or sdavidmiller.com.
People can find me at christopherinreallife.com or twitter.com/christopherirl. If you want to listen to the back episodes of the show, you can go to thespoilerwarning.com, where you can find those there. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can do so on Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or wherever podcasts are found. If you want to get a hold of us directly, you can send an email to fans@thespoilerwarning.com, or you can use the contact form on our site. Music for this episode will be that little jingle from the film festival, so hopefully you are enjoying that. And yeah, another review down, a few more reviews to go. So hopefully you enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.
This is Canadian content, and it's time we take credit for it. Starting now.
Oh, Canada!